This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you in partnership with TKM Inc. TKM stands for The King's Men. They pride themselves on being hardworking, honest, and dependable. They put an emphasis on serving Christ by serving others.
Their scope of work cover road construction, small dirt work and excavating, heavy hauling in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Georgia.
They can be reached at 931-243-3958, and they are located at 10635 Clay County Highway, Moss, Tennessee, 38575. You can also find more information at benandtravis.com/TKM.
TKM Inc. is also a sponsor of the Batify Freedom 5K and Fun Run on July the 10th at Mars Hill Bible School. We would love for you to come run with us in person or do it virtually. You can register at benandtravis.bigcartel.com. That's benandtravis.bigcartel.com. Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis, and also Will Mahan has returned finally. Will Mahan has come back to the podcast. We're excited to have him. We're coming to you bright and early on a Saturday morning, and I've got my coffee and my bed head is rocking. But Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Had my coffee as well, but I picked mine up on the way to the office. So we are rocking and rolling. Excited for another time together with you guys. And I'm super excited that this week is Maywood. So we'll be hopefully coming to you guys from Maywood a couple of times. Obviously, it won't be live. I don't know. Maybe it will be at some point.
Who knows? If the cell service is better, who knows? It might get crazy.
We play it by ear around here. So whatever happens. Will, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Drinking my water this morning because I'm not old enough to drink coffee.
It's true. There is a level the older you get.
It is.
And I don't want to cut you off there, Will, but, I was going to ask you guys how you like your coffee. And it is crazy. The older I get, the blacker I enjoy mine, which is kind of weird, because I remember being your age and thinking, I'm not old enough to drink coffee. And now it's like, man, I look forward to it every morning.
I went to, I believe it was Starbucks with an older person of the generations, and I ordered some fruity whatever drink that Starbucks had. And he was like, you millennial coffee drinkers, y'all don't even drink coffee. It was just kind of, it's like, we need to eat our coffee with a spoon. So I was like, well, that's disgusting.
I'll drink it that way, but I don't enjoy it that way. Like I gotta have, you can tell, look, it's like the color of it indicates it is not pure coffee. There is some sugar and creamer and all kinds of stuff in it. I've got to at least have the creamer. I don't usually get sugar in it, but I got to have some creamer in there, cut that bitterness a little bit.
That looked like you had a little coffee with your cream.
That's exactly.
I'll say, I'm not judging you because I like it that way every once in a while. In fact, when we get to camp, that's probably how I'll have mine, just because I need that extra boost. But I usually do about 2 sugars. Actually, it's stevia. So if anybody wants to trash a millennial, give them a hard time, I'm using stevia. So there's that. And also coconut milk creamer is in mine. But it's not quite the color of Ben's. But it seems to get darker as I get older. But anyways, that's a little intro for our coffee people. That's not what we're here to talk about. Although there are some people, I'm sure, that if they don't have their coffee, that can be somewhat anxiety inducing. But we are here to talk
for sure
about some practical techniques to deal with anxiety. And, we've got our professional counselor here with us, Ben Hayes, who's going to talk a little bit about that as an intro. And then we'll kind of get into some techniques that we've found. Some of them I've experienced and tried. This is not a exhaustive list of things that you can do by any means, but maybe this will whet your appetite to go out and maybe explore a little more on your own. But Ben, tell us a little bit about your experience with that.
Well, in my experience in counseling, it seems like this is, at least as of late, the biggest majority of what I end up dealing with. obviously see some folks for marriage counseling and things like that. But even then, it seems like that's a big part of what's going on in their lives. And so done a lot of research on that, spent some time at some different conferences and dealing with it. And, the first thing I would say is if you're having extreme anxiety, one of the first things that I ask people, is what's the level of intensity and what's the frequency. And so, depending on, what that is, you may need to see somebody, so just start off with that, don't put off too much. If it's, putting you in bed all day, every day, or just all day, every day, you're struggling with it. Some of these techniques may help, and we would love for you to use some of these, and hopefully find some relief with them, but you may also need to speak to somebody. So, we always encourage that if the need is there. But basically with anxiety, it's a natural thing. I mean, God gave us the ability to be anxious, the ability to at least have those thoughts of, I need to do something, because it stems from the idea of the fight or flight mechanism. You guys remember that from school? Just the idea of, if I'm under a threat, or if there is an imminent threat, I need to run, I need to get away, or I need to fight my way out of it. Now, some people add to that freeze, because, it's kind of like, if I freeze, nobody's going to see me. You think about what an animal does. If you see them out in the woods, see a deer or whatever else, and they feel threatened, they're either going to run, they're going to freeze and hope you didn't see them, or they're going to eventually come after you and attack you if you've got them in a corner. Even a deer will, if backed into a corner, they're going to fight their way out. And so
the Jurassic Park T-Rex approach, like, don't move.
That's right.
There we go. Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe he won't see me. So, there's those things that our mind automatically does that under a threat. There's actually a really, really neat little book that I found that, you're into the deep NT Wright readings. I'm into children's books. So
that's more my level, probably.
There's a children's book called Eek, Said Amy, and Amy is the amygdala. So you got the amygdala in your brain that goes off anytime there's a threat. And sometimes Amy, or the amygdala, goes off at inappropriate times. It thinks there's a threat when there's not. And so generally speaking, anxiety is worrying about something that has happened or something that's going to happen, but it's not happening right now. So you've got, if somebody busted into my office right now, the all the stuff that needs to happen is going to happen. My heart rate's going to go up. My breathing is going to be elevated. I'm going to start sweating. I may even feel sick at my stomach because I need to get rid of, the coffee so that I can run, whatever the case may be. That's all natural stuff that happens because God put it there to keep us safe. But if I'm in a scenario like I'm about to do something that's anxiety, driven, that push, like if I've got to go to the dentist today, that's not really something, it's kind of a misplaced part of that. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh yeah. I mean, as a person who's been through anxiety with cancer, and, it's always the options of what it could be, and trying to deal with that before you have all the facts, and that it's absolutely that. And so it's kind of one of those cycles, you lose sleep over it. And I'm one of those people that I'm not typically going to get sick unless I'm tired. And I just, and so it's kind of that cycle of if I lose sleep over it, then I'm actually physically going to be a little sick. And then it's just, man, you just get in that cycle, and it's a tough one to get out of. And so, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world of, trying to deal with the possible facts before you know the facts, and getting kind of ahead of yourself, or taking an experience in the past and going, well, that could be what happens this time too.
Right, exactly. You've got that past experience, which, is what a lot of people end up with anxiety about is something has happened in the past that's legitimately hurt them, legitimately been a threat. And now, that's, kind of the idea behind, post-traumatic stress disorder is, hey, my brain sees something that's similar as being the same. And so it automatically takes me to that place where I was. And so, that's kind of another form of anxiety that people deal with. So that's certainly kind of what's going on in the brain. And so first off to understand is on one level, that's absolutely normal because that's the way our brains were designed. However, it's putting it maybe in a time that's not appropriate. So then what are some things, Travis, you mentioned that you had the scanxiety and things like that. What are some things that you have done in the past that, during those times that maybe helped you through it?
Well, I would say, you got us a nice little list here of things that we're going to go over. But, the breathing technique, and, if you sign up at benandtravis.com, you actually get a video of us kind of going through some of these techniques and, just learning to be intentional with my breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then there's some, techniques about even where your hands go during this process and kind of just being where you are. And we've said it before on the podcast, be where your feet are and, learning to take and process the information that's around you. And so the breathing technique and one of the points that we've got is journaling. And I wish that I would have done a better job of that when I was in the hospital. One of the first things Michael Rosenblum told me, hey man, you need to write down everything. And my wife was much better at that. And she's got a notebook that she did that, but man, I wish that I would have done it every single day, that I was there. I've done a better job of it since I've gotten out, and writing blog posts for benandtravis.com has helped too, to kind of process my feelings, my anxiety, and the facts. And it's really difficult for me sometimes to remember things accurately. And so I'm very thankful for my wife who has like this still trap mind, who can come along and go, that's not exactly how that was. You're kind of remembering it wrong, and she has the leeway to absolutely tell me when I'm wrong, and that's cool. But as does Ben and Will, you're getting there. But, I think journaling is such a big deal that I think a lot of times us men don't take seriously. That's something that women do, and it's not something that we do. And man, I wish that I would have done a better job, and I'm trying to do better.
Well, I think one of the benefits of journaling too is that, there's probably different ways that people do this, but one of the benefits is, you're writing it down, and one, you're seeing, hey, I've progressed. I'm doing better than I was. Like where my mind was a week ago or a month ago, I can see the difference in where it is now. And just being able to process that stuff. There's things that need to be processed every single day. And if you're not talking to somebody, which you may be, but even if you have a counselor, you may only be talking to them once every 2 or 3 weeks. You may have some friends, but you may not talk to them every day. Journaling is a way to process all of those things every single day and just kind of see the frequency and the intensity and what's going on. To the idea of mindfulness. And if you've heard that term but don't know what it is, mindfulness is basically just being in the here and now, being where your feet are, kind of what Travis was talking about. And so that's the reason mindfulness is so helpful, is because instead of worrying about yesterday or about tomorrow, I think Corrie ten Boom that wrote some stuff following being in concentration camp in World War II. She said, that carrying around tomorrow's worries is like carrying around 2 days' burdens at once. And I don't have that quote exactly right, but it's that idea of I'm not just carrying around today, I'm carrying around tomorrow. So mindfulness is sort of getting yourself set in one spot. Like here I am here's what I see, here's what I feel, here's what I hear, here's what I can taste, here's what, just getting yourself connected. And so we're probably going to do a little bit of that. We'll follow up with that a little bit later in July, maybe try to give you guys some techniques along the way throughout the month.
And along with journaling, I like to color. That's something that I don't know. You can tell me, Ben, how that works, but man, I just enjoy coloring. It makes sense of things. It's kind of one of those things that I don't know. I just enjoy doing that. I've got a little comic book coloring book that I color along with my kids when they're working on stuff at the table. But
when you're coloring, what are you focused on?
It's right there in front of you.
That page. You're not focused on stuff that's gonna happen, things that did happen. When I draw, or color or whatever, paint, you're focused on that right there. So that in and of itself is a form of mindfulness. You're losing yourself in the moment. And we talk about that with our kids. Just play with your kids. Enjoy the moment. Don't, I'm the world's worst about trying to capture it with a photo. There was a picture this morning I saw, and it said, everyone's hero. And it was this guy putting at the Masters or something, and he's going to putt, and there's 2 or 3 guys around with cell phones recording it, and then there's this one guy just watching it like this, and they're like, that's the hero that we all need. The guy who is just soaking in the moment and not trying to record it. So I think just living in the moment is one of those things that can help. Will, what are some things that you've noticed over time, just with yourself, things that you've done that have helped?
It's interesting to me because my wife would tell you that I would probably be the less likely person to deal with anxiety, just because my personality is so carefree, go with the flow. Let's just roll with whatever's going to happen. I kind of am a lot like Travis, these Enneagram 7s that are like, oh, okay, let's just forget it and move on to the next thing. And so I think through time, one thing that has helped me in different seasons of worry or just frustration, anxiety, we can call it that, has been running and exercising. That's kind of been the biggest thing for me. Lindsay and I were walking last night, about 10:15. We just went on a walk. And just the pure joy that I find in those moments has been a huge thing for me. Just with work weeks, camps coming up, all those different things. Hey, let's just go walk. It's just us. We can kind of talk about whatever's going on, but we're actually almost feeling good while we're doing it. And so we may have a problem, or there may be that frustration, but there's just something about exercise, whether it's riding a bike, going on a swim, anything that releases some endorphins. The expert over here would know more about it than me, but it just makes me feel better. And that's something for me. Another thing, I was reading an article that said a lot of people, or some people, can totally reset their bodies by getting in a body of water. And it was a really cool article. I wish I could remember where I found it, but that is totally me. I can go sit at the Gulf. Shout out to my father-in-law, because if I called it the ocean, he would come back and haunt me. But sitting out at the Gulf, sitting at the pool, getting out at the creek, there's just something, taking a shower, there's something about just those moments for me that totally reset. And I know a lot of people are, y'all too would know about some anxiety that Lindsay had over, she caught a parasite, long story, that just really kind of changed some issues physically for her, way better now. But there was some anxiety about that. And I remember she would just go and take a shower for 30 minutes, and it would just kind of reset. And so there's things like that for me. The coloring has come along with Emmy. I have a thing on my iPad that is Disney coloring books, and we'll get on it. And after she hands it to me, I'll end up coloring for like another 45 minutes, and I don't even realize it. I just go, oh, I'm going to color that one, then move on to the next character.
Leave it to a millennial to color on a screen. I mean, just saying.
I know. But I get to say, I never lose one of Emmy's coloring pages. They're always there. Can't hang them on the fridge, but I always have them in my pocket. But some of those things, I think exercise for me has been the greatest. Lindsay was saying last night, we walked that 3 miles. And I said, man, this just feels really short. And she goes, yeah, you're one of those people that gets lost in it though. She said, I want to know when it stops or when it's going to end and all that. And so, I think some of those things have been huge in my life, whether it was just anxiety or worry about the work week or a relationship or something there. That's just kind of helped me. The other thing I was going to pitch in, but you already did such a good job, is I think finding people that understand your anxiety, not understand it, but that are willing to listen. In youth ministry, we have found several of our students here and even in other places that come to us and go, hey, I'm having major anxiety over this, but my parents just say it's not real and it's not a big deal. And so I don't know what to do about it. And so I think one important thing too is surrounding yourself with people that are open to this idea of, hey, anxiety is a real thing. Because I've even talked to several people that go, oh, that's a made up thing. That's not real. That doesn't affect you. And until you've sat in a room with somebody who's just shaking, like sometimes you don't really understand it. And so I would really try and, even to the people that don't struggle with it, be more open to listening to the people that do. Because from what I've seen in my life, those of us that maybe haven't struggled with it could struggle with it, tomorrow, and something could change in our life and it become a very real issue to us and our personal endeavors too.
Two things to your point. Yesterday I was on Facebook, the beginning of the end there on Facebook, saw something that kind of upset me, and I went on the pavement. I went and ran, walked 3 miles, and all of a sudden I come back, man, I've kind of put things in perspective. The physical, my daughter recently had a run-in with ants at school. And so now she doesn't want to get outside, the ants, and to me, I'm like, that's ridiculous. There are ants everywhere, but to her, it's a real thing. But if we can get out and swing the baseball bat or do a little pitch around or start having fun, all of a sudden she doesn't think about the ants anymore. Hey, we're having a blast. We're having fun. So, I mean, even on that level, that's pretty in-depth, knowledge coming from Dad Creasy here, but it's amazing how that works.
Well, I had a kid several years ago, and I don't remember if you were here then, but there was a kid that was struggling to get on the little, it's the big thing that takes you up to Ober-Gatlinburg.
Yeah, because Travis Ben has become like a superhero in the minds of everybody that saw this. They all looked at him, and then they look back at me and go, wait, our preacher can do this? And so he did some little techniques that really kind of freaked out some of our kids. Like, Ben's got some witch powers over here.
Well, so he's freaking out, doesn't want to ride this thing, and we're already on it. And like, just he's going to have a conniption the whole way up the mountain. And there's just one of these things called an induction, where you just do a sudden response to somebody. And I just grabbed his head and kind of looked at him and said a couple of things, and it sort of shocked his system for a second. And then we just started talking. And then by the time he kind of figured out what was going on, we were already like halfway up the mountain. And he looks out and he's like, well, this isn't bad. And like rode the rest of the way. And there was no issue, and it was like, but it was that situation of, I got him focused on something else. And once that focus got off, and then he could, sort of like what you're talking about with the baseball, or if you can get them going through in the place where that's at, and then recognize, oh, the fear or the, anxiety isn't nearly as bad, or the things that I was worried about are not nearly as bad, then, sometimes it can change the way things are going. So anyway, that was kind of a thought.
Is conniption, is that a technical term? Is that one y'all throw around a lot in the
conniption fit? Yeah.
It was really funny. The rest of the conversations, the weekend at CYC, after Ben did that. So it was pretty cool. Another thing that you had done, I know, with different people that I've brought to you, is the whole serenity prayer. What can I control versus what can I not control? And we've even talked to some of our kids after that, or after the fact of, hey, let's just start telling me what you can control and what you can't control. you're nervous about what's coming up. Well, what are the logical options that could happen? And it's always been kind of amazing to watch them go, well, here's the worst possible thing that can happen. And then they'll start to see in their own minds, okay, that may not be that bad, and they start to kind of move through that. So even some of those things have been, successful in some of our students' lives too.
Yeah, and that's huge, just knowing what I do have control over. And I think that's for another discussion, but that's also a big help for if you're struggling with anger. Like a lot of the anger is I really want control of things I don't have control over. And, if you can recognize and start to realize what those things are, then it will help you.
Stop talking about me, Ben. Stop talking about me. Okay. Stop talking about me.
So here's the big question for the day. And one of the things that I put down, and this may be a little bit of a trouble topic for some people, but is the idea of worry. Is worry and is anxiety a sin? I get that a lot. Get a lot of people who are asking that question. And I said one thing and we were kind of talking back and forth about it. I'm sure we've all seen that. I'm sure we've all heard people say something like that.
Some of us have said it before.
And some of us, I've probably said it before too, to be honest with you. But what I recognize too is that when I call it, a lot of people's anxiety gets heightened because they feel anxious. And then as a Christian, then they feel guilty about being anxious. So now they're anxious about being anxious, worried about being worried. So I see a lot of that. But one thing to consider is, Jesus did say, don't worry, Matthew chapter 6, he encourages us not to worry about things, but to consider the things around us. So where do you guys think that fits into the discussion of worry and anxiety?
There's a humble opinion coming, so please take it that way. I think that it represents when it becomes a distrust in God. And so then it almost, it causes us to go into a sin spiral or a cycle. I worry that I don't have this. And so then I look at Ben and go, well, what does he have that I don't have? And so then I'm coveting, how can I get that? And it consumes me. There's all kinds of examples of that where it leads to distrust. You're mentioning of Jesus in the garden. I don't think anybody can look at that picture and not go, he's at the least a little anxious, right? But he turns and trusts your will be done. If it's your will, I know there's going to be a good outcome. And so it's when it leads to a distrust in God. And I think that there's a path to that where there's several times to get off that path. I don't think it's immediately because once again, I believe, help my unbelief. I think that's acknowledging our issues and acknowledging the, what creates our anxiety, but then also going, I know who can solve that. And it may not be a quick fix. It may be going to a counselor. It may be praying. It may take years. You may not ever totally overcome it, but there's this constant, I'm going to keep going to God. And I think Job says, even though he may kill me, I will still ask the questions,
And you go back to Jesus in the garden and it says he was troubled. He was deeply grieved that when he was praying, he was asking that the cup, which was something that was going to happen tomorrow, pass from me. The things he was worried about were things that were coming up, not that were happening in the moment. And I knew he was about to be arrested, but the things he was saying, let this pass from me, were things that were difficult. So we all are going to have that response to things. But what, Peter said, he kept on entrusting himself to the one who judges righteously. But I'm not going to tell somebody, and obviously there's a difference sometimes in the small worries and people who have clinical anxiety. Yes, yeah. So I think, we have to make sure that we understand that too. Saying someone with clinical anxiety, someone who has something within their brain that is not firing exactly right is the way that I sometimes put it. Is it's like nothing wrong with you, but just like you can't help that you have diabetes. Somebody can't pray diabetes away. Somebody can't, you can't shatter your arm. Will, I think you've broken a couple of arms. You can't break those and then just go, okay, hang on, give me a second. I'm gonna make this go away. You can't make it go away because it's something legitimately in your body that's not responding correctly. So there's going to be those times. So don't get anxious about being anxious, because that's only going to heighten it and make it worse when you go, hey, I'm a sinner now because of this. And that's one of the things about anxiety is like when you get into things like OCD and things, is I'm attaching a devastating or, completely unfounded meaning to the fear. Like we all have anxiety. It's what gets us up in the morning. Hey, I got to go to work so that I can make money, or else I just lay in bed all day. Those sorts of things. I'm going to push myself to do it. But then anxiety attaches this meaning of, if this, then that. If I don't do this, then the world's going to crumble. Or if I go to that thing, these bad things are going to happen. And we attach this terrible meaning to it. And so that ends up heightening. So, hey, if I keep worrying, then I'm going to be a sinner. God's not going to be pleased with me. Well, guess what happens? I go down that even bigger rabbit hole if I'm not careful.
I think it's interesting too. And you look at Matthew 6, which is where, the majority of this conversation comes from, with what Jesus says. And to your point, well, to both of y'all's point, but Travis, yours, in verse 33, he says, after all of these, everything you're going to worry about, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added or provided to you. And so it's like you look at it and go, okay, what is the point of worry? It takes my eyes off of seeking the kingdom. Yep. And if I can keep my focus there, I can still have issues, the things that I'm concerned about. But when they don't take me out of seeking the kingdom, then I don't think that we can walk away going, man, hey, you've got to quit worrying about everything, or you're lost for all eternity. I don't know that that's a fair statement, that we can come back with.
I think it's interesting that in the same context, the same speech, you get to Matthew 7:1. And he talks about judge not lest you be judged.
Yeah.
And once again, another humble opinion coming your way. I think those two conversations are connected, as in, if you're trying to police or control the uncontrollables,
mm-hmm.
And he goes on to say, do not cast your pearls before swine. You're going to, I don't want to say waste, but you're going to spend a lot of time dwelling on things that you have no control over. And so I think that, the chapter break happens, but it doesn't take the context out. I think what he's saying is there are some major issues and there's things that you can control. Those are the things that you need to be involved in. And then everything else, give it to God the best you can.
Yeah. And if you back up before that passage, the section before it, he says you can't serve God and mammon. So the direct context of it is, quit having a divided attention. You're trying to, you're saying you belong to God, but then you're seeking after all these other things that may not have anything to do with God. So, or may not have anything to do with your faithfulness to God. I've got to have this, and I got to have this, and I got to have this. No, you just got to have God. Let God have it, and then the other stuff will sort of work itself out. So, I hope some of this discussion has been helpful, has been something that encourages you. Obviously, as we always say at the end, if you guys have thoughts, if you have other things that you've done, share those with us. I think that would be helpful to us and to other people to see what you have done in the past. And then, like, as we talked about, y'all want to talk a little bit about the challenge for July. We've had several people say, hey, give us a challenge. What's the challenge going to be in July? And so we thought about something that went along with this, the freedom in July.
Shout out to our Facebook group
Yeah.
That's facebook.com/groups/Ben and Travis. They help pick this topic for this episode. And occasionally we throw out the question, hey, what do you guys want us to talk about? We would love your input. If you're not a part of that group, look us up. And that's probably the best way to kind of get in touch with us and say, hey, could you guys cover this, or could we do this in this month? So that's kind of what we're talking about. We talk about these challenges. We're just about to wrap up our 30-day challenge of June. And so Ben is talking about maybe this future, or July 2021.
The first challenge in July is come run the Freedom 5K.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's the first challenge, is come be a part of that at Marcel, July 10th, starting at 8
a.m., I believe.
8 a.m., I believe. Yeah.
8 a.m., 5K, 1 mile fun run. Love for you to be a part of that as well, as we raise money for St. Jude.
Yeah, and you're going to get, the first 100 people who register for sure are going to get a meal at Chick-fil-A. They've been nice enough to donate a meal card to everybody.
In-person runners, because some of you guys aren't from Florence, and that Chick-fil-A card's not going to do you very well, unless you want to drive a long way. But sir, in-person runners will get that card first 100. So
come run, and then after you run, just go Chick-fil-A. On your way home. Perfect.
And we may have some other food there available. We're trying to work out some of those details, but we would love to have you guys for that. So for the challenge in July, what we're going to ask people to do, just a couple of different things, is we're going to keep with the one chapter. We'll kind of throw something out. We've done Proverbs in June. It's been a blessing. In July, we'll do something else, along that line. But to read that chapter, and then spend a little bit of time meditating on the chapter and in prayer every single day. What we've talked about doing is about every 5 days or so sharing another technique of some sort. We've talked about breathing. We've talked about mindfulness. We talked about several different things like that. And so share a couple of techniques as the month rolls on that you can practice for 3 or 4 days. And then, do those every day along with your reading and prayer. What are some other stuff, guys?
I think we want to exercise. We want to get out, spend 30 minutes, whatever that looks like. Maybe that's a mile run, mile walk, mile swim, mile crawl. If you prefer to do
Jumping
something,
jacks.
If you prefer to do something in your living room, if you want to be super hardcore, you can do burpees. Man, what is it about a burpee? Like push-up, sit-up together with a jump, and you're thinking, that's not that much different. Wow.
Arm circles. I mean, whatever.
Just get that heart beating a little bit along with our study and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much sums it up, right? So reading, prayer, and meditation, doing some of the relaxation techniques, meditation techniques that we throw at you, and then just some sort of exercise 20, 30 minutes a day, just to kind of help with your mental health and your freedom in July. So we hope you'll come along. Will, you going to join us in this?
I will join. For sure.
Awesome.
He sounded really excited about it, like we know all the rest of you will be as well.
Well, you can get all of that content, benandtravis.com. You can sign up. We got a free 28 days of focused living book that we believe helps with mindfulness and all kinds of stuff. You get a few, like I mentioned, extra videos right out the gate on some techniques to deal with anxiety. But guys, I certainly appreciate you guys taking time out of your Saturday, but I sure do love you guys. I appreciate your willingness to come on and talk about these things that are so important. I think that all of us deal with it at some level, but we all know someone who might benefit from this. So I guess my challenge to end the show is share this on your social media, share it somewhere that you think people might see it and gain some benefit from it. That's always our prayer. That's what we really do this for, is to help with some healing and add a little humor in there.
Wow. Nicely done.
But love you guys. Y'all have a great week, and we'll talk at you again soon.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.